after d4, knight f6, c4 and g6, the king's Indian is on the board. In this video we're going to go through the main move, which is knight c3, but there's also knight f3, g3. We're going to see a little bit of everything, but let's go on with the main topic of the video. After bishop g7, obviously white takes the center with e4, and now the move is d6 to start controlling the dark squares a little bit more. And this video is named the f4 attack for a reason. So white can play f4. We're going to start with this. Black goes on with castling, and after knight f3, black plays knight to a. Let's quickly make a note about the fact that why did white play this kind of move. That's because it increases the number of pawns in the center, and it also puts more control over the square e5, because white knows that black is willing to play e5 at some point. And also, obviously, the f-pawn is moved because after the castling, and this is something like you see in the Vienna Gambit or King's Gambit, the rook will be on an open file as soon as the trade of the f-pawn will happen. Knight a6, I suggest. Also, another move here could be c5, but I want to play knight a6, so the repertoire will be based on knight e6 right now. The reason is you want to preserve yourself the possibility to play c6, and so the knight shouldn't go in c6. And the plan now will be pretty similar. So either bishop e2, bishop d3, the plan remains similar. So let's go through, for example, bishop d3 looks like a very normal move. Black goes on with e5. Knight b4 doesn't really do anything because the bishop can go to b1 and then a3 will kick your knight away. You're wasting time. So e5 is the move now. And let's see what happens after the white player who has played this f4 move takes the pawn. Pawn takes, okay, pawn takes again. So it looks like white has a lot of attack over this pawn. But what black has succeeded to do now is to seize control of the center, because white will no longer control the center with the pawns. Let's start with this move. Knight takes. This is bad because of queen takes d4, obviously, attacking the knight. And now the knight will have to go backwards. The knight cannot be defended in any possible way. Let's say, for example, bishop e4 loses the game immediately because of rook to e8, double attack on the knight, which threatening to win material. And when the knight goes back now, attacking the queen, queen goes to b6, preventing the white player from castling, attacking b2, and preparing knight e4. And this is unstoppable. It's going to happen no matter what. And black doesn't just win a pawn, because after knight e4, of course, knight taking back will allow you to, the knight is pinned. You could play bishop f5, and when the queen protects, then you can play knight to c5, right? So if black were to play again, you will just take this pawn immediately. And you don't just win a pawn, but you win an incredible position. So what happens if white protects that pawn? Let's say queen e2, then knight in c5. Now you see how great it is to have a knight in a6. It's putting pressure on this pawn. Needless to say, if black were to play again, the next move will be queen takes pawn in b2, attacking the rook and attacking the knight. So we're threatening to take the knight with check. If queen takes in b2, you've got knight d3 check, and it's an incredible position. You're going to recapture the queen. If white pushes the pawn, then knight h5 wins for black. The position is evaluated as like -7. So of course, if the bishop goes back, then after a capture, then you can take in e5 for free. You threaten and discover check that wins everything. So for example, bishop back, take, then take, and then you can take this pawn. And it's an amazing position, because no matter what side the opponent castle, let's say castle is this side or castle is this side, you can still give a check, and then there's going to be an attack on the queen. And knight cannot take back because you can simply recapture. Queen cannot take the rook because knight d3 wins the queen. And any piece, like for example knight blocking, doesn't make any difference. You're just going to develop more. Bishop g4 is the key move now. Attacking the queen, the knight is still attacking the bishop. If the queen moves away, like d2 for example, you can just double up the attack. It's fantastic. Position evaluated -22 or something like that. If queen takes bishop, then check. And after the king moves, then rook to d8. You do whatever you want in this position. So from the start, after d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, e4, and d6. Okay, so the king's Indian is happening, and now we're looking at f4. Black castles, knight f3, and black continues with knight a6. We are still looking at the move bishop to d3, e5. So pawn takes, pawn takes. Earlier we went through knight takes. Actually, we still need to go through knight takes to show a quick other line. Queen takes, and we went through the disaster after bishop f4. So you can't defend this knight. White will have to play knight f3. again, black continues with queen to b6, putting pressure on b2. And after queen to e2, the idea of developing the bishop with the tempo whilst defending the pawn in b2 and finally being able to castle, because right now white cannot castle. And also the idea of castling queenside would be a suicide. Black continues with knight to c5. And now a lot of things can go wrong here. Black is simply threatening to win the bishop pair by playing knight to d3. But let's see what happens. Bishop e3 looks like a very good move because it's pinning the knight to the queen. But instead, you can simply take the b2 pawn. So remember this pattern, right? It's very, like a queen takes and then knight d3. The black is so much better. And also with attacking the rook. And if the rook moves, then we're taking the knight. So that's game over already. So in this position, what happens after bishop to b1? This also looks like a very normal move, saving the bishop. Okay, black continues with bishop to e6. Position is already like as if black was up a piece. And you can tell why. Look how great the development is and how safe the king is, whereas the white king is not safe. So after now, white plays bishop to e3. We don't have that tactic of queen b2, obviously, because the bishop will not be taken by the knight. He will be protecting d3, actually. So black continues with knight to g4, attacking the bishop. And the bishop will be forced to sacrifice for the knight. Well, not really forced, but that's kind of the only thing to do. Because if white wants to preserve the bishop pair and just save it in g1, for example, and the idea of playing h3 to kick the knight away so that the bishop stays alive at least, this is punished real hard by this incredible move. Bishop c4 attacking the queen and creating this unbelievable position. Look at how strong black pieces are. And if the queen takes the bishop, then you can take in b2 all safely. You're attacking the rook. You're also attacking the knight twice. There's nothing now. The position is evaluated as -8 or something like that. Whatever white does, bishop takes with an attack on the rook. Maybe now it's just too late because of bishop takes here, and the position plays itself. And of course, if white plays h3, for example, attacking the knight, then you can just take the bishop. Queen takes back, and then bishop to c4. Incredible position, threatening queen to b2. Position evaluated -11. So, I mean, the white player is simply never going to castle, and the development of the black rooks is as easy as ever. So after knight to g4, in this position, let's see what happens when white reduces the pressure by taking the knight, also removing the queen from the b2 attack. So queen takes back. And now obviously h3 once again cannot be played to get rid of the knight because of bishop to c4. And if white plays, well, okay, b3 to protect the pawn is not possible because of bishop c3, winning the game for black. So after bishop to d3, protecting the pawn, it looks like a normal position, but white plays rook a to d8. And now it's already too late for white to do anything about this because we're still threatening to take in c4 if the white bishop were to move away. So the bishop stays there, we're attacking the bishop, queen takes, and then queen f2 is really scary. If white were to castle alongside now, for example, bishop c3 would be the strongest move. You've also got knight f2 attacking the two rooks. It's an easy endgame. If, let's say, just to show it on the board, h3, then rook takes d3. And the pawn cannot take the knight because rook e3 wins the queen. So after queen takes, then queen f2 check. King moves to the only square. And now queen to b2 attacking the rook whilst preparing knight f2, winning the queen. And there's nothing here, even if white wants to try something like pawn takes g4 with an attack on the h file, queen takes, and now obviously queen cannot protect because you can take the knight for free and protect the queen, or you can take it with the queen, but you can simplify and just take the knight with the bishop, whatever. If white blocks with the knight, you got bishop to c4,